Hi, Matt Mara. Thank you for being a guest on Unfounded. I'm really happy to have you here today. Our topic is building capacity as you grow. And I know you know that we're going to tackle this topic with just three questions, one that looks to the past, one that speaks to the present, and one that leans into the future. And as you also know, we gave each other a sneak peek into questions 1 and 2 about past and present, but question 3 about the future is the wild card. We have not shared that with each other in advance. And also, as you know, I've declared no formal bios on this show. But for anybody watching or listening that wants to hear a little bit more about Matt's experience as a business builder, as a mentor, as an investor, you can read about it in the show notes. But what I have done in lieu of bios is ask Matt to pick only 3 words by which he can introduce himself, just 3. So let her rip, Matt. You got 3 words.
Passionate, driven, competitive.
I might drop the mic like damn straight. Like I don't know. You don't need my affirmation on your identity, but you are.
And thanks for having me. Looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
you are those 3 things. Well, thank you so much. All right, capacity building as you grow. Like, let's do this. You and I have had some pretty amazing and intense conversations about business building. Some of them were pure genius. Some of them wine-soaked nonsense. But all of them, the thing that I always love most about working with you is you and I see things differently, and I learn so much. We are living proof that there is usually more than one right way to solve a problem. But where you and I never disagree is that you can't solve any problems without the right capacity. And so I can't think of anybody I'd rather have this conversation with today than you. So thank you again for being here.
Well,
we're going to start. Oh, thank you. We're going to start with the past question. So go in the we're in the time machine now. We're gazing back at the Matt of the past. What's one business building skill or technique that maybe served you well earlier in your career that now today has either you value it less or maybe you've left it behind as you've matured as an operator?
Yeah. So this one was easy. Being always on or eager to have a timely response when asked a question from, the founding team or executive teams. With more experience, comes patience and knowing when to have a complete answer, and usually that being more helpful or informative than a fast response. I've also valued sleep a lot more, having a toddler running around. Early mornings are a bit more challenging after late night work sessions.
I think when you gave those 3 words, that makes a lot of sense, because to be all those things, that I can imagine that's one area where you would tweak as passionate and competitive, right? Like tweaking how you throttle down on all that.
Yeah.
And what it means, right? Like what does it really mean to be passionate? That doesn't necessarily mean that you reply to every message the minute it hits your inbox, right?
Yeah, like I would also say those 3 words are not necessarily positive traits. Sometimes they're double-edged swords. Passionate can be a lot of transparency and emotions on your sleeve.
Yeah.
So
I don't
yeah.
know what you're talking about. I have no idea.
You've never seen in a whiteboard session.
No, I've never been passionate with you in one either, so I have no idea what you're talking about. All right, present, your turn. Lay one on me.
Sure. Oh, well, don't I ask you?
You're gonna ask me yes. Now it's your turn to ask
past,
me.
past, right?
Oh, pass. This is twice today I've done that. Yeah, it's like I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
Too fast. Yes, I'm sorry.
All right.
You're taking me back to the past now. Thank you for fixing my show for me.
Just helping out with the editing.
Thank you.
So for the past, my questions for you, especially since I'm on the operator side, was when did you know you were willing, or you were able to stop building companies and start fueling other companies' growth with rev up funding?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, because I'm not sure I ever stopped wanting to be an operator. I think I am I mean, it's probably why you and I became friends. Is I actually really like to do stuff. Like I'm into doing stuff. When I started out as an equity investor, we were really more removed from the companies in some ways because we were focused so much just on fundraising. When you come in as a first investor, early stage investor, yeah, you're helping with the business, you're providing some support and resources, but right away the clock is ticking and you're like, shit, I got to get this company to the next round. And it just gets, which is, I understand, it's okay. When I made the switch after many years, I think Alan and I did like 90 companies in that fund. When we made the switch to RevUp, we really did want to give ourselves the flexibility to focus more on fundraising again, to go back to the work that we did when we were founders or when we weren't even founders. Like most of my career has been working for another founder. Like I was a pretty good number one for a really long time because I'm like a border collie, like I like to get shit done. But when we did RevUp, we really wanted to get out of that myopic obsession with fundraising and get back to business building. So we designed RevUp. We did a lot of stuff on the market facing side. So I think I've never really not wanted to operate. What I have experienced over the years is, kind of self-taught as an operator. So I will say that as I've matured, I've been able to get more selective and more surgical on knowing where I make the best contribution. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I think, yeah, I just like to do stuff. So yeah, that's it.
Can't blame you. It's hard to turn.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. All right, now we're in the present. Now we're time traveling. So now we're sitting in the present, talking to President Matt. Back in the day, we used to talk a lot about the ideal startup team as having like one hacker and one hustler. I remember these cheesy posters that used to be hung up in accelerators and co-working spaces, and it was like this drumbeat. If you had one hacker and one hustler, like you had the key to success. What do you think about that slogan today? When you look kind of how you build a company today?
Yeah, I think in large part, I think those are still good attributes of a founding team, though I would say you could argue that today you don't necessarily need two founders, just given how far like tech has come. Just think about how you can launch an MVP with just like Stripe, HubSpot, Salesforce, and some like no code, low code add-ons. Again, like depending on your definition of a hacker, right? Like personally, I would change the founder slogan today to like trust the data, build fast. It shifts the focus from the construct of the team towards like what the winning teams are doing, right?
Yeah.
Now, like obviously, fast is all relative depending on your industry and who your client is. But as long as you're focusing your time, trusting what the data is telling you, and shipping faster than the other guy, then that's how you can get to the next stage to play back to your past question of making sure you get to that next round, or you are able to keep the lights on. Even doing things that aren't scalable early on is fine, as long as it's you ship it, you learn, you iterate, you track the improvement, and you repeat. That's demonstrating viability of the business and justifying the next round of investment.
Yeah, I set this up and I'm not supposed to respond, but it's becoming really, really hard not to do so. But you just made me think that really now a team, you might have hacker, hustler, and data. Data is like the third team member now, and you might trade out the hacker or the hustler if it's right. Like, yeah, that's a really
so
interesting.
much more data too now, right?
Yeah,
like
data is almost like a person on the founding team, right? Yeah, really interesting.
There's no more guessing. There's no more guessing.
It's really interesting. I like that. Okay, I'm not supposed to talk. All right. Your question for me on the present.
That's right. All right.
I got it right this time.
Okay. Introspective comes with experience and self-awareness. So where are you currently in your professional growth trajectory? And what is the y-axis metric you used most to know when you've approached your apex?
Wow.
Basically, I want to know, in your LeBron James career, where are we? Are we still
that's a great question.
Bending the curve?
Yeah. So I feel like, and I think, I don't know if it's just the way 2020 was for a lot of people. If you were on the precipice of rethinking, you had a big opportunity to rethink, right? Like they always talk about, it's like with a crime, do you have means and motives? And I'm like, if you were on the precipice of really rethinking, like we had means and motive in 2020. And yeah, I think one of the best experiences that I've been able to have is always always really just sort of be able to experiment and innovate with whatever I do. Like I haven't had a lot of experience working in large enterprises where that kind of freedom and flexibility just doesn't come with the package. And I think I've just come to understand how much that matters to me, and how natural I fit there, and how I don't really fit just pedaling the bike of a thing once it's up and running. And that kind of stinks a little bit, because sometimes it's just nice to keep doing the thing you're really good at. And I think for me, I think I'm like more of an S curve person more than a linear person. I think my life is an S curve, and I think I am. I'm like moving up on the curve again, thanks in part because of the moment that COVID gave me to get off the road, to be thinking about the future of what I care about, both in terms of diversifying the funding toolkit for early stage companies, but also all this language around supporting different entrepreneurs better, like getting beyond those buzzwords and actually deciding, like, okay, where are you going to put a line in the sand? Like, where are you going to stand on this? And I have, and I'm also have a lot of privilege. So I'm lucky to have a little bit of bandwidth and time and an organization that supports me to take these steps. So I would say right now, yeah, like I think I'm heading up another S curve. So that means I will flatten out again. I know that for sure. But I feel like I'm on the up right now, and now I just got to figure out what's the contour of that. So I'm on the top of the S curve.
And
yeah, thinking a lot about it.
Just always buy the dip.
Yeah, just looking forward. I mean, if you even just think about the work that we do, the work that I do with founders, and how much has just really changed in the last couple of years. I mean, it's really a very different world, different opportunities, and so yeah, I think. I'm pretty excited to be alive. Like, I'm glad I made it through 2020. Pretty happy about that. So, all right. We're in the future machine. We've just transported into the future. So now as we think about building capacity and like as you grow as an organization, or maybe as a person, as the last question was, I would say it's an understatement to say that a lot has changed in how you build a business over the last like 10 to 15 years. I mean, it's fundamentally like the half-life of a business model. You blink, like you've missed it, right? And I think given how much things have changed, globally, how much consumer behaviors and human behaviors are changing, is there a capacity or resource that is more important today than it was maybe a decade ago, or a new capacity that we didn't even think about as a capacity that wasn't on the radar then, but is now?
A new capacity,
Yeah, like if you think about your toolkit, what's in there?
Yeah, I just think, kind of going back to the founder question, there is so much as a service now. Like there's so much that I have found, both as a builder as well as an investor on diligence, that I can find as a service. That does, literally open up new value propositions. I'm going to do it. Knox does a lot that is outsourced, right? And the reason we're able to do that is because there's been a lot of offline to online happening in, insert any trade. So like literally there are now maintenance teams that have APIs. Like think about that, right?
Yeah, right.
The whole offline to online of moving, atoms with bits, drop a pin in Tokyo from my chair here in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and a car in the Uber app will move in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And that driver's going to be kind of upset, but like that's the idea, is that you are literally moving people with technology, things with technology that have just unlocked so much more time and the ability to innovate. Again, I come back to, the startup founder today is not, one hacker and one hustler. It's, a person that has the vision and utilizes the tools that have been built and scaled. And now they're so cheap because of the economies of scale that you can just build more faster. So I think it applies to, both sides of the equation here. And I can tell you, I've I've benefited from that. You can never leave your seat, and your salad's on the way, and lunches are now, no longer in person. It's coming to you, and you never left your desk. Now, is that the best thing? I don't know. But, all this time, because of that, that as a service aspect,
Yeah.
notarize, like everything that you ever could want, done in person or needs a physical being, if it hasn't been built yet, uh, there's people building it.
Yeah.
And it's a race to figure out what those next things that we want to do in person that need to be streamlined are.
Yeah, maybe that's the capacity that really you need a capacity to figure out how you're going to plug all the stuff together in the best confirmation for whatever you want to do. And back in the past, you had to build it all. So you had to figure out the cheapest, most efficient way to build it. And then there were some off-the-shelf stuff, but really so much opportunity for value creation now isn't about inventing. It's about connecting things in ways that haven't been connected before, right?
It is. And because of that question, I'm going to change my question.
The question you're going to ask me?
I am. I'm going to
Okay. Well, it was the wild card, so
I'm going to change it. And then
okay.
and we'll have like a bonus feature of like what the other one was. How's that?
Feature. Okay.
All right.
All right. We're in the time machine. You're talking to future. Melissa's looking to the future.
So Melissa's looking into the future because there is so much more capacity, and because things are being built as a service at such rapid scale. Is it now binary, or is it less the exception rather than the rule, that a founder can only work on one business at a time? I think of Twitter and Square with Jack Dorsey. I think of Elon Musk with Tesla and SpaceX. And I just think that, well, I'm curious to hear your perspective as an investor, where focus has been such a theme in the past. In the future, because of that new capacity, is that no longer a requirement, rather an actual competitive advantage?
Yeah, no, it would be tempting to answer that really glibly, right? And talk about how it to be like no, I like that. I think singular focus there, because there are other capacity gaps that you have to fill, and all that time that you get back from that. I think there are other demands inside businesses today that as soon as you get an inch, something takes an inch. I think there are things today that are proportionately more challenging than they were. What's hardest now is just replaced what was hardest yesterday, right? So it's tempting to just sort of focus in on that. And I think while you get all this time now on things that you can utilize and leverage, in this as a service module, but you have to be double attentive and creative around building the models around that, and how you deliver value, and how frequently you are reassessing if you're creating that value for your customer in the way that you think. And I think that's the energy around business model innovation. You now have to revisit a business model with such frequency, right? In order to see if the way you've tied all that together is creating the value that you want. I'm not sure at the end of the day, you really have a lot of extra time given back to you. I think the dollars that you once invested in, maybe perhaps the time in building some of that infrastructure that now you can sort of push a button and tie together. I do think there are other things inside of a business now that will demand that time and that resource. But I think there's another answer for a group. There is a place in our innovation entrepreneurship landscape where it's probably always been a little bit true, where a person's ability to be spread is an attribute and does deliver really unique value back to both of the companies, or whatever, all of the things. So I think maybe this is going to enable more founders to be those extreme outliers, because really, how many Jack Dorseys are there in the world, right? Like, yeah. But maybe there'll be more of that. I do think it will help people in the beginning. I do think you can multitask around the more practical concerns that most founders have, which is how do you keep the lights on while you're working on it? Like, I have seen people kind of get up and out faster, like, and get to the place where they could quit their jobs and things like that. So I do think that we're kind of living in that moment. I'll tell you my deep concern about this, that I haven't put words around it yet. I think we reached this point of peak economic efficiency for new code creation. A little,
Yeah.
I think we're actually past it. And I'm now seeing the cost of business building going up again. Uh,
Hmm.
because of the ways you have to spend now. You used to be able to just have pretty predictable ways to spend on acquisition, and you can sort of, but now again, that is
The
every
playbook's
day.
out. The
Yeah,
playbook's
and it's
out
not,
though.
and it's not the money you're spending on the platform, it's the money you're spending on the talent to watch the platform. And so I'm kind of coming to terms now with this. A lot of the narrative around capital efficient businesses and reflects some values we developed maybe, over the last 10 years when I think we were at peak cost efficiency in getting companies up and running. I'm consistently seeing now, to do it right and to do it well, I'm seeing companies need to spend a little more. I'm not talking go out and hyper raise and go crazy cakes, but I am seeing costs around, costs shifting inside businesses and not being as offset as they once were. So for every efficiency you're getting here, I'm now seeing another expense emerging over here to retain your competitive advantage or to do what you need to do. And it's one of my things I'm trying to figure out what I'm actually saying here. And I feel like now I got to go find some data to give some legs to this story. But I do think that the pressures we're seeing around how you differentiate, because so many of these tools, to your point, were great equalizers. They gave everybody access to the same stuff. So now to compete, you have to add something special.
Yep.
So what's your specials? And in most cases, your specials is talent, like people who really know how to ride the wave. Like these are like master surf riders, right? Who really know how to ride the wave, and that shit's expensive. So I think I feel you. I think it's an interesting question. I don't think I know the answer, and I think there's probably, back to where we started, there's going to be more than one answer to that question.
There is.
So there you have it.
So so I'm going to pause just in case
Yeah.
there's a cut.
Well, so there is no, but I'm not editing these.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So do you want the bonus question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
All right. So the original question was, from your perspective, we have come from, the last, call it like 5 to 10 years of disruption, right? And I guess my question is, in the future, are we going to, given what has happened over the last year in tech and the focus on big tech having too much power, are we actually at the point where we need to have, founders concerned about regulations or their fundamental business work? Or meaning, have you started to warn founders about, when considering cryptocurrencies and accepting them for payment, gig workforces that are actually powering your core business, consumer data, collection, business practices, to have a redundancy plan, given the focus here? And has it shifted your investor thesis at all?
I'm not sure it shifted my investor thesis, because in the sense that by the time I invest, companies are I'm not sure it affects me directly as an investor. Probably affects me more as an advisor, where I'm working with companies that are probably outside my portfolio. So I think I've always come at these questions differently, because I did not come from a community of privilege and and worked with business builders that were outside of these networks of privilege. I think I was always more tuned in to the potential barriers and things that you needed a lot of privilege to just leap over. So if you think about the way technology companies that we think of in that context leaped over those barriers, they did so because they had, some just came first and got away with it. But then after that, they did it because they had incredible amounts of privilege. So they had huge amounts of resources to sort of buy their way into this gray space that they're in now. I think the vast majority of companies do need to be thoughtful and mindful about regulatory environments and cultural changes that are going to impact their businesses. And you see it the way we even had snapback against companies that went from being kind of beloved to being seen as social pariahs, right? As being seen as predatory, I do think it happens. And I don't know what government will actually do here. I think there are people who are better at reading political tea leaves than I am. I've always sort of just kind of side-eyed all that and kind of gone on with my merry way. But I think the bigger issue is, I think, figuring out how all of this disruption stitches together globally. I think probably my takeaway from all of that is you used to only have to worry about one country. So as long as you had somebody that had a bead on what the next tranche of regulations would be in North America for technology, information privacy, think about all that stuff, right? But we kind of tasted that when we had when the European rules around data privacy, became so poignant to North American based companies because they had global customers. I think when I think about now the frontiers of technology, when we're the Wild West of technology is, I think the bigger issue is not only are you going to have to contend with the regulatory issues that are in your backyard, but you actually now, I think, have to be having a lot of forward-facing resources on how all this stuff's going to fit together, because you could find out at a very inopportune time and in a very disruptive way that it doesn't fit. And you can find yourself in the kinds of trouble that we couldn't even imagine when we were kids fooling around with technology. So that's problem. But I am not a hardcore technologist. So that's like me sitting in like my Adirondack chair with like a gin and tonic, like talking about like crazy technologists, So like I'm like, take anybody, like you should take that for what it's worth. I really don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but that's kind of how I see it.
It's interesting. I mean, look, like I find it interesting because I come from the disruption category, right? And irrespective of the governing bodies, nothing moves faster than brand and consumer sentiment, right?
Sorry.
And so if you don't have a redundancy plan of, hey, like this is going to change, consumer behavior is going to change before any law is passed. That's for sure. Right. So
yeah, totally. I think it's an excellent point. Yeah.
The investors always ask me, what keeps me up at night, and I usually stick with the macro, the things that I can't control. You do the best of what you can control.
Yeah.
It's the things you can't control, and how quickly you can have a redundancy plan that scales. That's that's firefighting.
Well, and it's like regular business building today. It's like goes back to that business model half-life. I mean, you got to do it anyway. So, all right, time is up. We've reached the end of our journey through time and space.
We survived.
About capacity building. So we survived. We got through it. So, thank you again for participating, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me again.